I've got my lovely sewing machine here, and I found recently that quite a few sessions I've done, I didn't realize how many people have sewing machines and don't actually know the very, very basics of how to use them. So, sorry, just trying to get this to stop wobbling. I thought I'd got it before, but no, there's this extra little bolt here that until I put my phone in, I didn't realize it was wobbly. Right, let's tighten that up. I see why it's this one up here. There we go. Right, so I will show you how to use the basics of a sewing machine. And if you can see a little bit of smoke in the distance, don't worry, nothing is on fire. It's a little incense thing that I've got over there. So no need to worry about that at all. So what I'll do is I'll turn off this camera over here because if not, I get really self-conscious. So let's get rid of that. Plus then it uses less internet as well, so it's a little bit easier. There we go. And we'll put this, just trying to work out from my camera up there where the optimal place is to put my laptop so that you get the best view possible without it being very hard for me to use the sewing machine. There we go. At the moment, this is getting a little bit annoying. My laptop has decided to be a pain. There we go. That should be a little bit better. Right, perfect. So now we have got my sewing machine here. So every sewing machine will be a little bit different. So just because my sewing machine works in this way doesn't mean yours will. And if you enjoy this and you want me to show you on a different type of sewing machine, so a lot of you watching this back will probably know that I co-run a textile scrap store called Thread Republic in Huddersfield. So we have a lot of different sewing machines there and they all function in different ways. I've had to learn how to thread them up all differently. Oh, I need to tape that. That's horrible. But this, so if you've ever been to one of my sewing sessions before, you've probably heard me talk about how much I love Boninas. So that is the brand name. So generally with sewing machines, you're going to get Bonina, Singer, Joe Mill. Sometimes Genome is under the name New Home. I'm just going to check this incense burner quickly because it's smoking a lot more than it normally does. Oh, right, it's all good. I just wanted to check it wasn't burning the actual wood that it's in. It's just being a little bit smoky. So yes, we have got Joe Mill, Bonina. You sometimes get what's a Juki, and Juki is a slightly more modern one. And everyone, depending on who you talk to, will have really, really different opinions about sewing machines, depending on what they grew up using. So I love Boninas, but I kind of only really like old Boninas. Although we did get a new one donated to the shop and I really like that one. It's really nice, but I think it is a very, very high-end one. So generally, with a sewing machine, for the most part, you have a spool here, and that's a little pokey bit, or they'll sometimes I've got a genome where instead it goes across like that. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not a big fan of the machines that thread up horizontally. I find they don't work as well. I'm going to use a different colour here, I think. Let's go for this because we're going to work on denim, so we want something really nice and bright. So this thread that I'm using here, it is it's a viscous freehand embroidery thread. So actually, I'm just going to see if in the box next to me I've got any more. Yes, I do, right. I'm going to use this instead because I didn't realise that almost all the thread that I have at home is this free motion embroidery thread, which doesn't really work for kind of practical repair-based sewing. It's very, very shiny. It works best when it's moving at a fast pace, whereas this is a sew all from Moon. I really rate Moon threads. You can also get Guttermans. Now, my mum swears by Gutterman. She won't use anything else. If she has to buy a different brand, she gets a little bit annoyed about it. But I personally find I really like these. They're a bigger spool. It's a little bit cheaper, but it depends. Some sewing machines, like especially older sewing machines, are quite snobby about what thread they use. So, but generally you want to sew all kind of poly cotton thread. And with this sewing machine, it goes in the top like this. And for the most part, with almost any sewing machine, in fact, let's show you how we do a bobbin first. So this one, I love the action on this. So this was my Auntie B's sewing machine. My Auntie B was like a very creative person who sewed everything. And when we lost her, I got given her machine and I'm obsessed with this. I think it's a beautiful machine. Somewhere I've got a thing saying when she bought it, and I can't remember when it was, but there's a little sticker on the side of it from 99. So this sewing machine is at least 26 years old, but I'm fairly certain she got it in maybe the 70s. So it's nice and old. I personally prefer a sewing machine that's metal because I think if they're metal, they're made to last, whereas a lot of the modern ones are plastic. They feel more lightweight. They're not glued to the table as much, whereas this, it does wobble. I think it wobbles because I've got it maybe over the years, some of the things have gone, but I just find the plastic ones jump about too much for me. But I love this action of it lifting up and just popping up like that. It's so satisfying. And a lot of sewing machines will have a little diagram like this that tells you how to thread up your bobbin. So this one is a really, really nice, easy one to do. Sometimes, like some of the machines we have in the shop, I have to kind of work out each time how to thread them up. And similarly to saying that I like metal sewing machines, I like a metal bobbin. I don't trust sewing machines that use plastic bobbins, which again is really snobby of me. But it's just, I found the ones that use plastic bobbins seem to have more problems with them. This one's a bottom loading bobbin machine. Like some of them, you load the bobbins in the top here. I personally find that the ones where you load them in the top, they get tangled more quickly, whereas this goes on like that and then you wrap around here. So you generally, anything like this, you'll do it in a figure of 8 like that. So it's wrapped around and then wrap it around a little bit. I tend to do it so that it's going towards you with the wrap, push it down. With a lot of sewing machines, there'll be a thing at the side where you either pull it out or give it a twist and it will disconnect the feet mechanism. Because basically what happens with this one, and I'm sure actually there must be a way to disconnect this, but you often find that a lot of, oh, sorry, that I didn't realize that's what that was. But yeah, I don't think this one has a way to disconnect it. But generally, with a lot of more modern sewing machines, this doesn't go up and down. Oh, actually, ignore me. This I've not used this sewing machine in a while. But if I did this, you'll see, actually, as soon as that's down, that will go up and down. But not every sewing machine does it like this. A lot of sewing machines, as you press down the presser, this will still go up and down, and there'll often be either a little switch on the hand crank, or there'll be a little push button, or a way that you twist it to disengage it, and that will stop it moving. But they're all different. And then with most sewing machines, it will do that where it pops up when it's done. So then we can take that off, put that back down, take this off. And most sewing machines will have a little cutter to the side. I don't think this one does. No, it doesn't. A lot of more modern sewing machines will have a little cutter. That's fine. Sorry, I've just taken all of my scissors downstairs for a workshop I'm doing later. But yeah, we'll just use a pair of scissors. And then to load up your bobbin, with this one, it goes into this little section down here. See, this has got a little thing saying Tyson Sewing Machine Centres. So she will have got it in Southall, outside London, I'm sure, because that's where she lived. So then you pop this in here. So this is the bobbin case. And the bobbin case will have a little line just there. So you put it through there, so it comes out through that hole there. Sometimes people thread them through here. But if I'm honest, I've never noticed a benefit doing that. So it's not something that I ever particularly teach people if I'm doing kind of like a beginner sewing session, because it's a faff and I don't honestly see the benefit. So then with a bottom loader like this, then it goes in here and you put it in and there'll be a little groove. See if I can get the light. There we go. There's a little groove at the top just there. So if you push it in, it should click into place. So if you don't hear a click, there could be a problem. And then to take it out, you would lift that out like that. And now before we go any further, I'm going to show you how to clean the sewing machine, because this is a really, really important thing. Pull that down and see all this fluff. Probably a good job that I hadn't cleaned this for a little while. It's just because I generally sew at the shop at the moment when I'm sewing. And so this poor sewing machine hasn't had much use, because there's no way I'm taking this to the shop, because it's way too special to me. Like if someone damaged it, I would be really, really upset. So I'm just looking for somewhere I can have a little brush. So I've got a thing over here, because my auntie was such a big sewing machinist. She had this amazing case, it was just absolutely full of all different kinds of feet. So if this is something that you're interested in, if you wanted in future sessions, I could show you how different feet work. So and if I'm honest, I've not used all of these yet, but there's lots of interesting things in here. Like this one is a freehand embroidery foot like attachment, which I've never used. I've never worked out what to do with it, but it's the kind of thing to do. I'll also show you how to change a needle as well. I think that would be useful. But yeah, so I just inherited all of these beautiful things. I've got a few things like walking feet and stuff like that. So if this is something that is of interest to you, if you're watching this back, do let me know and I'll do kind of a further sewing machine one. This also has a really handy thing where you can put needles in it. It's just really, it's a good bit of kit. Okay. But then what you do is you get a little brush, like, hold it, it helps if I move this, doesn't it? I'm trying to make sure that the foam thing doesn't get in the way. There we go. So then you can just brush off any grease and grime. And this is when I'm not actually going to put it on, because, oh no, actually, maybe I will. Modern sewing machines often don't need oiling, but because this is an older one, it does. And you can go even further than this. You can take this bit out. And I often find when people haven't sewn much before, they get really, really anxious about this part. But like I've just had this bit fall off and I just think it's fine. I can see where it's come from, not a problem. But generally everything about sewing machines is quite kind of logical. But I would recommend getting yours serviced every so often. So if you've got a sewing machine that you haven't used in a long time, then getting it serviced is a really good call. It's something that I'm really hoping to do in the future, is learn how to service sewing machines myself, because it is a skill that is running out. We're lucky to have a really good guy in Huddersfield, but I know not everywhere has this. Does this come from here? I think it has. So then this would go back in there. And this is the fiddly bit, putting that on there, because then it often falls off. And then we want this bit to go back on there. And this is where I think this little gubbins here has come from. Yeah. Sorry, now you're having to watch me fix a sewing machine, but it's all good knowledge. It's just fiddly, that's all. Yeah, there we go. So then that can go back on there. And then with this, put it in there, and I'm just going to get rid of a little bit more dust. So one thing that people often get wrong is if they are adding some oil to their sewing machine, they really, really over add it. Whereas all you need to do is the tiniest drop, nothing more than that. And if any of it gets anywhere else, just give it a little quick mop up. Yeah, that's all you need. And on older ones, it kind of helps if the sewing machine has already been running. So then we're going to put this, so it goes in there, and going in the same direction it goes out through there. We're not going to bother with that. Pop it in there, and then we're going to keep this open for a moment. And then we're going to go back to the top. So every sewing machine, like I said, very different, but this one, it has a little catch here. So we're going to put it away through there. Most sewing machines will have a little catch like that. And then it goes through here. And again, most sewing machines will do this, where it will go through something like this, around something at the bottom. And then if we move this here, you can see this come out, and that goes into there. And then it tends to go down again. And we've got one sewing machine at the shop that does this backwards, and that really confuses me. And then we're going to lift this, we'll lift the foot up. And then we'll put this through the eye of the needle. So you can use a needle threader on this, there's no shame in that. And if you try and do it with the foot down, it'll be easier. So something I was told recently is that actually you shouldn't lick the thread to get it through a needle, because then it expands the fibres. So if you have to do it more than once, then it's a little bit faffy. So then what we're going to do is so this is just a basic sewing machine foot. So we're going to put that through the centre like that. And then I'm going to turn the hand crank. So that's the bit over here. So we'll turn that, just so you know what's happening as I do this. So I'm gently turning the hand crank. And as I'm doing that, you can probably see the mechanism move at the bottom. So what this thread is doing, as I hold it gently here, is going to grab onto it, and then you gently pull back, and then use the scissors or anything that's near you to pull that out. And then you are ready to get sewing. So you can put that back up. So a few other things that might be useful to know are tension. If you're not doing something that needs a change in tension, do not bother. So some of them it's a dial, some of them it's a switch, but this one I generally try and just keep it on the middle thing, unless I'm doing something like freehand embroidery. And then this one, I actually don't know. I think it's just the kind of length of the stitch on that one. And then they'll always have a different dial that tells you different stitches, depending on what kind of machine you've got. Sometimes it will just have a straight stitch or a zigzag. Sometimes it will have things like this, where it's got all of these fancy stitches. And this one just slides, where you pull it to the side and then pull it down and across like that. That sort of thing. So we're just going to stick to a straight stitch here. And then over here, we have got the width of the stitch. So going from small to a big long stitch or actually that's the width, ignore me. So if you're only doing a running stitch, you keep it on 0 because it's not going any further. But if you're doing a zigzag, that's how you do that. This one is for a buttonhole. So if it's got this kind of square shape, that's a buttonhole. This bit here changes the length, but also if you want to reverse, you just push it back, and reversing is really, really handy for when you're doing kind of when you start things and finish things. It's just a more professional finish. And this one, I believe this is the feed dogs. So I'll show you what the feed dogs are in a second, but this means you can lower them or heighten them. So if you're doing freehand embroidery, then you want it on the lowered version. The feed dogs are these little bits just here, just there. So I don't know if you'll be able to see them. Maybe if I get rid of, if I get rid of the foot, it'll be clearer. Probably not easy to see, but basically it's these little bits. Yeah, there we go. That's probably a clearer version. So what those do is when you're sewing, they lift up and down and up and down, and they grab your fabric and they help guide it along. So that's all of the kind of options on this sewing machine. Depending on your sewing machine, you might have different things going on. So like mine, I can turn the light on or off. Some, as long as the sewing machine's on, the light will be on. Well, I'll show you how to change the needle as well while we're here. So again, different every time. But this one's really, really nice because some you have to use a screwdriver for, but this one, you just twist it gently and it's got lots of texture on it. So Bonina is a Swiss company, so they're all about precision. And then sewing machine needles will have a flat side and a rounded side. So you just put it in so it clicks into the right place. Tighten it up, and then you are ready to get sewing. So I've got my feed dogs up. I've got my dust out of the sewing machine, and you can always do things as well. Like some sewing machines, my other sewing machine, well, I've got quite a few. With some of them, you can literally take this side off, and that's a good way to get rid of dust that accumulates on here as well. But like on this one, you have to do it with a screwdriver. So let's show you what it looks like in there, just for fun. I say that hoping that I have a screwdriver next to me somewhere. Because normally sewing machines will have a little box just here that will have all of your gear in. But I'm not sure what I've done with that bit because I don't often use that section. But if I've got a screwdriver nearby, yes I do, then always turn the power off if you're doing something like this. Should come out fairly easily. And the thing is, with a sewing machine, you should never be scared to do things like this. We've got quite a lot of people who've donated us sewing machines at the shop that are really beautiful sewing machines. And I think that the only thing that was wrong with them was that they'd mucked up the tension. And if they'd changed the tension, it would have worked fine. And that's the thing, it's just not having that confidence. But all of this is nice and simple. So we've got the bulb in there, and you see all of this dust on here. So you can just give this a little bit of a brush out as well. Plus, it's interesting to see what lives in there. And this sewing machine has been around for probably, I would guess, like maybe 60 years plus. So nothing that I do to it is going to cause long-term damage. It's lived a life. It's been cared for. And if you're looking for a sewing machine, I would always recommend, firstly, just putting a call out on your local Facebook group, because we have been donated so many at the shop. We've got so many machines, and a lot of them do need serious repairs doing to them. But a lot of them are absolutely fine and work brilliantly. So there'll always be someone who's been given one or has inherited one but doesn't know what to do with it, and will happily give it to someone who'll use it. Secondly, if you're going to buy one, buy a second-hand reconditioned one. So if you're in Huddersfield, I think the guy in the arcade sells some. I would recommend kind of going and having a check, or if you buy one from a charity shop that sells them, because they always have to check that they're mechanically working well. But let's get to some actual sewing. Half an hour in, let's do some actual sewing. So I've got a pair of jeans today. So I figured maybe next week we'll do some actual repairs, but today I might just do a kind of basic how to get started. And these jeans are not going to be worn again, so I can chop into them. So what you do to start with is I'm going to press gently down on the foot, and this one doesn't have a speed control. The other sewing machine I've got, which is I think the Genome, that's a more modern one where it's got a little slider that's got a tortoise on one side and a hare on the other, so you can change your speed. But what I'm going to do is, if you remember this little button over here that you pushed it up to reverse, and most sewing machines will have a reverse button. So I'm going to do a few, oh, helps if I turn it on, doesn't it? Few stitches forward like that, and then I'm going to press the reverse button. So if you're going to change direction, what you do, put your needle down like that, like if you're going to do a box. Like that. So what do you do if something goes wrong with it? First thing I would say, like if I was stitching this and it started making angry noises at me, so this is stitching really, really nicely. I always forget that this one doesn't have a chopper. So what you want when you're stitching is you want for it to look, I'm just going to give this a little bit of a brush. You want for your stitches to look the same on the back and the front. So this is the back. If anything, the back looks even neater. Looks very, very nice, very neat. But say on the back, you were using two different colours, and colours from the back were coming through more, or there were just big lumps on the back. So there's a few troubleshooting things you could look at. Firstly, it's that tricky tension. So if your tension, there'll probably be a little marker like this one on your machine to tell you what the kind of standard tension is. And if you're sewing on an easy fabric like cotton, denim, something that doesn't move much like calico, then it should be on that. Unless if you're using jersey, if you're doing free motion embroidery, you'd change it a little bit. But I would very much recommend, if you are new to sewing, the love of God, do not sew on stretchy material. It's so stressful. It's better to use like a walking foot for that than just a standard foot or a ballpoint needle. So a few other things that you can do. This sewing machine has these gorgeous little guides along here, these little lines. So what those are for is for making sure, and this is what I'm really bad at, stitching in a straight line. You go forward a little bit, backwards a little bit, and you just make sure that that edge there is following that line. this bit of fabric is not a straight line, so. So my partner today was wearing a jumpsuit, and I'll show you the importance of a back stitch. So this is from a company that is meant to make very kind of well-made clothes, but if you don't do a back stitch, this is what happens. This thread has come off very, very quickly. And all it is they've not backstitched this properly. Whereas if you do a good solid backstitch, maybe even 2 or 3 times, that is going to secure it down and it'll be really, really strong because it locks it in place. So it can come out eventually, but it's a lot harder. Getting again that I do not have a little cutter on the side. So I'm just going to see if I've got, because you can get some other feet. Like growing up, my mum had a Benina when I was little. So I think she still has. Yeah, I'm fairly sure she does. And that had a very different foot on it. A foot that had a big section coming out to the side that would help you with a seam allowance. So I'm sure I used to have at least 1 or 2 of them. Sorry for all of the noise. So just looking at, I've got so many feet next to me. Yeah, this is quite a small foot. Whereas this one that I'm about to show you, I can't find the one that I was thinking of, but maybe for next time I'll try and find that. Probably, to be honest, at the shop. So like this one is another little standard foot. It's just a little bit wider. So the main difference is that it makes it easier to do bigger seam allowances because then you can have it lining up with the edge there. We've also got this one here is one of my favorite feet. It's a free motion embroidery feet. So if I show you, if I take this out, well, I love the way that this one clips in. Sometimes with some sewing machines, you have to like properly screw and unscrew bits, but this one, you just put it on, put down a little bit there. So it's just really nice and easy to use. And then if I lower those feed dogs, like I was showing you earlier, and then because feed dogs are down, it's not, the sewing machine isn't being guided through. So you can just kind of draw with it. So I'm just doing squiggles. And the biggest worry with this is how little you've got to protect you. Because with this, you can often go at quite a high speed. And you can end up with quite big stitches depending on how fast you move it. So I've seen a lot of people hurt themselves doing this, but often people will put it in an embroidery hoop, and I find that quite restrictive, but it does help. But this little foot here, which one day I'll work out how it's meant to work, because there must be somewhere that it clips into. Basically, the idea with this is that this goes into here. So you take it out. Actually, I'll assume the other way around. Like that. And then you put that in there, lower it down. Actually, I get it. I don't think it's meant to click into anything. Oh, wait, no, I've got it. Ignore me, I understand. Sorry, and the thing is, I will have worked this out before. It's just what happens when you don't use a sewing machine for a long time, like a specific sewing machine anyway, because they're all so different. So yeah, that goes in there, and then you can move it around. But it just means that your fingers are more protected. No, I love free motion embroidery. The annoying thing about this is that this gives you a kind of a lot less room to work. I'll show you one of my favorite free motion embroidery things that you can do. So if you get a piece of fabric, and I totally forgot until recently that I used to make friends things with this technique. So I met up with some friends I hadn't seen for a really long time. And one of them was saying, oh, I've still got that, like the brooch that you made me of my car, because she's got a classic car. And I was like, oh, don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, yeah, you made me this lovely brooch. And I did it this way, where you put layers and layers of different fabric on the back. Don't know why I'm defaulting for hearts. That's not really my style, but that's okay. And you could change also, you could change which stitch you do on this as well. So not the best example, but it will do. So this is a really good one for repairs, because if there was a little hole there, you could do this around it. And this is basically a form of reverse applique. And then what you do is very, very carefully snip through the top, and then trying not to snip through the back fabric, which I think I've not done it. That's all good. Probably using better scissors than this. These are quite big scissors. So all of that stitching keeps that in. Oh, I did cut through it a little bit, but that's okay. So something like that kind of thing. And then a more kind of traditional form of that is proper reverse applique. So I'll show you what, there's two different types. So applique itself, you do with the fabric on top, and you would normally attach it with something like Bonder web or similar. I'm just gonna put a few little pins into that. But I prefer reverse applique because I think you have to do less for it. It's quite nice. So if there's like a tiny little hole here, say, then what we would do is we'd go to a zigzag and we'd do it on the tightest zigzag that we can. And I'm going to put the feed dogs back up now and put on my normal foot for this. So we want an even tighter zigzag than that. Keep that in. And I'm going to do a little reverse here. Now the thing with this is it uses a lot of embroidery thread. So it's better when you do this with an actual shape in mind rather than just going for it. So I'm going to do a little bit more over here, I think. And then always finishing off with a little reverse. But then that is just a big block of very dense sewing. Where have my scissors gone? Had them just seconds ago. They're not exactly a small pair of scissors as well. I'm going to see if I've got some smaller scissors in my box that's next to me. So I've got my kind of assorted box of sewing stuff here. No, I'll find a small pair of scissors. Where they have gone, they're huge. Oh, these should work a lot better for this anyway. So then what you do is separate the back bit of fabric so you can kind of lift it up like that. So it's really, really separated. Do a little snip. And then you go around trying very, very carefully not to snip into the fabric. Or not to snip into the stitches. Annoyingly, I've not quite caught all of that fabric behind it, but this is just an example, isn't it? Then you can get a little bit closer and kind of take any of those bits out, like any of the fraying bits. Like if you pretended that went all the way to the top. And it's just a really nice way of doing a repair. So another way to do a repair is if I had like a little break here. Then you could get another piece. And I'm so baffled about where those scissors went. Having a sip of my drink. Now I'm nowhere to be seen. That's deeply, deeply odd. If I get another bit of denim, I'll grab another pair of bigger scissors because those aren't going to cut through. Oh, found them. So this is really good for kind of like crotch rips and the thigh rips and things like that. Things where you don't necessarily want to do a visible mend and draw attention to them. I'm going to use a different color thread here so you can see what I'm doing. But you'd use the same color thread as your jeans or your trousers or whatever you're trying to repair. And this is generally better on non-stretchy fabrics. And then we're going to do it on a running stitch, and we're going to become very good friends with the reverse pedal. So we're going to go on a sort of not too long, not too short. And we're just going to go backwards and forwards tons. You can take the pins out after a few bits, because if you sew over a pin, it will generally break your needle. Generally, you always want to go quite a bit bigger than the break, just to make sure. And then we're going to do the same in the other direction. And basically what this is doing is just creating not only that patch behind it, but it's reinforcing all of those areas that are going to be getting worn really, really easily. And because we've got the feed dogs up on this bit, then it's just giving us nice straight lines, not going all over the place. There we go. So I might show you this on the middle of some jeans, because it's all well and good doing it on a flat surface, but that's probably not what you're going to be repairing on actual jeans. But yeah, look, you can barely see that patch. It's just so integrated now. Oh, actually, ignore me. No, it's a lot bigger. I've not covered all of it. But with something like that, you could literally cut all of that excess off and then maybe a bit more stitching. But it just makes it so strong. So that's not going to break anytime soon. And it's quite nice and tactile. So I get jeans in a moment. So it's much, much harder doing it on the actual crotch here. But like this little bit here, prime example. And generally, if you're stitching denim, it's really good to use a denim needle. But if you don't have a denim needle, that's okay. So I'm going to put in, the denim needle is just basically a little bit stronger. So we've got a piece there to cover that section. So you don't have to worry about the bits with seams, because they're not going to get damaged that much, but it's all of this little section. And it does get harder when you get to bits like this. So sometimes you have to lift that up and put it down on the top of it. And then it doesn't always want to come through like that. Put that in there. lift it up and turn around and do it in the other direction. There's a lot of kind of lifting up with this sort of technique because of the tricky textures. Of course, as you're doing things like this, always making sure that your fingers are well out of the way. So that fills holes quite easily. Obviously, if you did it in the same colour, it would be a good fill, but you wouldn't be able to see that on a video. And I know these are such a wear and tear area for people. It's one of those things I always get people bringing jeans in for a workshop, and I'm like, just quicker to do it on a sewing machine, and often my mending workshops are more based on by hand. So then any little excess like that, cut it away. Just makes it nice and strong. Yeah, there we go. Trying to think what else I can show you on the sewing machine for a few minutes. Yeah, this is actually a good time to show you if something like this happens. And you can just layer it up with another fabric. And you could even use that. In fact, I'll show you a nice way. So if you've got bag straps that go, a good way to fix them is use the across like that, needle down, turn it, go along to the end, go down, go across, across the middle like that. I think we have missed one. That's okay, you can always go back there and then fill that one in. So that kind of cross effect there is really good for bag handles and things like that. Obviously finishing it with a little reverse like that. And I'll take that off. That's what it looks like on the back, a little bit messy, but that's okay. Maybe do a little bit more free motion embroidery for the last few minutes. some things like this, you can literally draw a pattern to follow. Like grab a pen. Actually, let's do it without that. I'm more used to doing it without it. Sorry everyone, that was my phone died. I didn't realise that I was low on battery, but I feel like that was sort of everything we were going to cover. If there's anything else that you want me to cover sewing machine based, let me know. I'll get that sorted for future sessions. Any questions as well, drop me a message at kim@str.org.uk. I hope you have a really good day. Right, bye.